In attendance, the meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been duly posted for time required by law. At this time, is my microphone like really loud? No? Sounds good like this to me. At this time, I would ask Trustee McCutcheon to lead us in our invocation and Ms. Kriegel in our pledges.
All right, let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all the people that are present here, our commitment to this district, and putting our best foot forward for all the students and all the staff. Please be with us and guide us. Help us to make good decisions and always keep you number one in everything we do. We ask this in your Son's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Item number 2D, open forum hearing for individual comments. We have one individual signed to speak tonight, Mr. James Bell. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Name is James.
You will have 5 minutes to speak. I will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. Okay?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Name is James Bell, 106 Chapman Circle, Waxahachie, Texas. I want to talk a few minutes about an oversight I have identified that our schools have and an opportunity that WISD has when it comes to financial education for our students and their parents. These issues were identified through the Waxahachie project, which many of you are familiar with. The two areas I want to address that were identified by community surveys were next generation engagement and household financial health. I'm the owner of Texas College Planning Advisors. I'm an insurance agent and got involved with the Waxahachie project in its beginning and joined the task force called Next Generation Engagement led by Matt Autier. The goal of the task force identified that every youth in Waxahachie can add value to our city and needed to be equipped with critical financial management skills for lifelong success. And over the last year, more than 25 financial professionals volunteered to support teachers by going into classrooms to teach financial management skills to students. The one area that has not been addressed is that a college graduate with a bachelor's degree will have an average debt of $30,000. Today, companies hiring these graduates are experiencing a lack of participation in their 401k retirement programs due to the increasing student debt the new employee must pay off first. Teaching students and their parents ways to reduce this debt needs to be a topic for discussion in the classroom and with parents beginning in the early years of high school, if not earlier. Another area that was identified by the Waxahachie Project survey that needed addressing was household financial health. It was the goal of the task force in this area that every Waxahachie household needs training to achieve financial freedom, with requests for assistance being met with empowering and collaborative solutions. The number one challenge of Waxahachie residents that was listed among the 25% of respondents was the financial need for making ends meet. Today, the average parent with a college graduate ends up with an average debt of $32,560 per child. That debt has doubled in the last 15 years, and with the college cost increasing 8% per year, it's going to get worse. Today in the United States, there is a $1.5 trillion loan debt due to federal loans for the students and Parent Plus loans for the parents. Because schools don't educate or encourage parents to have a plan in place for paying for college, there is no awareness or understanding of what to expect or what can be done to avoid these loans. The school currently pushes scholarships which accounts for less than 3% of the aid available for college. The Waxahachie Project has brought it to our attention that more collaborative work needs to be done to make sure the student and parent make sound financial management decisions going forward after graduation. The school system does an excellent job for preparing the student to attend their dream college, but doesn't prepare the parent as to the options available to them to pay for the dream college. The school system sets a plan in place starting in the 8th grade with the career counseling, but doesn't provide any assistance to the parent or the student in developing a plan to pay to make that career reality. Therefore, many students that the school system spends countless hours of teacher time and tax dollars on to attend college is wasted because many parents are ill-prepared to send them to the child's dream college or the ability to pay for college at all. Because parents take a Band-Aid approach, they pay more than their fair share. This can deny students an opportunity to attend their dream college, and families who plan ahead for college borrow on an average 48% less, according to the Sallie Mae annual report, which is a loan company. When I realized this over a year ago, I began researching a solution to this growing problem and found a solution.
1 minute, Mr. Bell.
That is relatively new to this area. Because every family situation is different, we provide additional hour of free consultations. We do a free workshop that's provided goes over the overview of the college funding process and discusses the 5 biggest mistakes parents make in the 3 areas a parent needs to spend time in the college funding process. I'm working with other school systems in the county, and the workshops have been well received. Some schools are also putting the workshop up on Facebook Live and getting hundreds of additional parents to watch as well. Every parent that has attended has told me this is information they are not getting from the school counselors and needs to be shared with more parents. Unfortunately, I've been met with roadblocks and indifference at every level in the WISD. On behalf of the parents of WISD, I am asking the school board to provide assistance and direction with getting this program into our schools for the benefit of the parents and the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in time. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Okay, item number 3 on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have items A through H. At this time, we can take one of these, we can take all of them, A through H. We can remove one. We can take them individually. However, you guys would like to do the consent agenda.
I'd like to discuss item F as in Frank.
Okay,
Item F.
F. Are there any other individual items that need to be discussed? Okay, so at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agendas A, B, C, D, E, G, and H. Is there a second? And a motion by Mr. Schofield, second by Ms. Starnader. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, so item number F, consideration and possible action to approve the expansion of drug testing.
Yeah, I know Ms. Blaylock has proposed this agenda item, and maybe if she can elaborate a little more on the 10-panel drug test and screening. Again, my conservative side, I know it's $21,000, $23,000 in additional funds, but are we at the point where we want to accelerate our drug testing program to that extent?
Yes, sir, that is certainly a fair question. So, Ms. Blaylock, if you would kind of elaborate, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to
Ms.
do
Blaylock,
that.
why don't you come over here so we can, hot in here, isn't it? Ooh, candles.
Thank you. Yes, our SHAC committee took this back as a consideration item following that pilot year. And with the discussion of many positive, meaning that we didn't have many students who tested positively, the positive results of those tests, they felt like there was a need for us to consider doing a more in-depth test based on feedback provided to them from our SROs, our school resource officers with Waxahachie PD, and information from our outreach programs that support SHAC that with so many students not showing any positives, that it was likely that maybe we're not targeting all of those drugs that have been tested. We had also been forewarned of that by A&D Testing, which is the company that we currently use, that if at the end of that year, we didn't feel like we had a representative sample of what also matched what we were seeing in the city, that possibly we needed to expand it. We do have some options, though, if we feel like that is far beyond what we anticipated spending. They did let us know that we have the option to do a certain percentage of those as a 10-panel test, and then a certain student, randomly, you would be assigned a 10-panel versus a 5-panel, if that's something more than what the board would like to spend money on. More importantly, I wanted the board to know and be aware of why we would expand that test, so that we can ensure that we are targeting what we want, which is students to not be utilizing drugs. And at this point in time, they felt like the few negatives, the few tests that we had where students actually tested positive and needed to have some intervention for them, possibly could be a great thing, that if you expand to the 10-panel and you continue to see results the same, then for us in Waxahachie ISD, that means that our students are making those choices, which would be phenomenal. But fear that possibly we're not targeting all of the drugs that are being utilized by our population is the concern.
Dr. Kane, what's your experience in this area? Is it 10-panel, relevant? Or?
Well, one, it just depends on to what level. It is a lot of money. I remember when we first did we requested steroid testing, how much money districts spent, and it was really minuscule how many athletes. They were really doing the athletes at that time, how much it cost. And so you have a cost-risk ratio. To me, it is more important as a discourager. We don't really want to catch them as much as keep them from, give them a good reason to say, man, they're going to be, the drug testing. So I think it's a proactive step. Now, a good argument could be drug testing is drug testing, and kids aren't that sophisticated to say, well, I can get through a 5-panel, but not a 10-panel. Mm-hmm. I think what a lot of it is the level of tolerance the board has. If the board says, this is a really good, I think you could argue, should we do the whole panel as opposed to a 4-panel? I mean, I don't think that there is a bad argument. It's how much money do we want to invest, and that's not a value judgment like, well, you refer drugs if you don't. I think your questions are very valid. We just want to, I guess the assumption could be that there are kids who are doing drugs that we would be discouraging, and kids say we have a very extensive drug testing program with the idea we really don't want to catch them and throw them in, give them consequences, although that would happen, but to try to intervene and say, convince parents, now's the time if you've got a problem with a child, and for us to intervene before it's too late. So that would just increase the likelihood of that.
We do 100 tests a month, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So that would be an increase of $800 per month.
Or,
right?
Or we could do like Ms. Blaylock said, do the 10-panel, but do 50 a month.
And if we chose that option, then once again, just like A&D does currently, we send them by student ID number. The student, they have the entire population of students that are in extracurriculars. They put all of them into their randomizer, and they send us back the student ID numbers. They would then add an additional layer that they would say, these receive the 10-panel, these receive the 5-panel, or the board can choose to possibly say, twice this year we want to run 10-panel test, rather than 5-panel every time. And if this is honestly something that the board's not ready to decide on, if we feel like we need more information, I can most definitely bring back those plans to you with more depth as to what those options would be and what the cost of the analysis of that would be.
So,
I'm sorry, and Mr. Rogers, or it could be, this is okay, but let's do it next year. I mean, because I know your concerns about this year's budget. So.
Is your concern the increase in money? Is that what it is?
Well, that caught my eye, to be honest. And then the next thing is, I may be naive, but I mean, we're testing for some pretty sophisticated substances here, and we're only testing our extracurricular people. I mean,
The only ones we can test.
I know, I understand that, but I'm just wondering. I mean, I hesitate to say it's overkill, because if somebody's on methamphetamines, I want to know about it. But I just think the 5-panel is gonna target what in my mind we need to target.
And I can't really argue with you. I mean, I understand what you're saying. We want to make certain the board knows that we have these opportunities, and we're going to be pleased to fulfill the board's direction in this year or maybe next year, so we're good.
Does the testing entity have some data from other schools that we could look at of similar to
When they went from 5 to 10, how much did it increase?
How much
Yes.
did it have, what did, I would like, before I make a decision on that, I would like to look at
That's fair.
data
That's
from
fair.
some other place and see what is taking place.
And when she spoke to us about that, she referenced some districts that have been through that transition, and I could most definitely have her provide that for us.
So, Mr. President, may I ask that we withdraw this and bring it back next month?
We can, but I just have one question, and Mr. Calden may be the one that has to answer this. So if it's an $8 increase, and we do 100 tests a month, so it's $800 over what we had in the budget, right? Times how many months we have left.
Right.
When it would be 10 months throughout the whole year, and we'd have about 8 of them left at this point,
So it'd be $6,400.
6,400.
Okay.
Well, I was looking at the budget impact numbers on this page 89. Is that not accurate?
Well, that already has the $16, I'm sorry, $18 fee in there. So the
Oh,
only
okay, I
thing
got you.
the difference.
You're just
would be-
talking about the difference.
The difference is $800 a month.
Okay.
If we still did 100 tests. So if the only issue was the budget impact, I just wanted that number made public.
Okay. I've listened, but just again, clarify, what would be the benefits of going to the 10-panel? The SROs are saying that they think our 5-panel maybe is missing some things.
The SROs and then additional members like Impact Waxahachie, who are constantly, assessing drug use in our community, have encouraged us of that. And Ms. Williams, the president of A&D Testing, did tell us that when we first began researching and we selected them through the request for proposal, and we were deciding, should we go 5-panel or 10-panel, that if we had a very low number, we either had great things happening with our kids, and I truly hope that that's the case, but if not, we would probably need to expand, because some of those drugs, and I apologize that Melissa Bousquet is not here tonight to elaborate on what the difference is between what's in the 5-panel and the 10-panel, but she most definitely has done that research. They're a little bit more high-tech drug use than what we would be using in just the basic 5-panel. And that there is evidence that that is happening in Waxahachie, not specifically just with our students, but in our community. Therefore, students may be dabbling in that type of drug also.
So if we do go with the increased with the 10-panel, that would be through the rest of this school year, and then we could analyze it for next budget year. Yeah.
But it's an increase of basically $800 a month over what we had budgeted.
Yes, sir.
So it's starting November,
Be starting, yes, sir.
7 months,
7,
$5,600.
56.
Okay, at this time, I entertain motion, however you guys want to move forward with item number F on the consent agenda.
Make a motion.
Somebody needs to.
I would play, I was going to say just 2 minutes ago, I was going to vote against doing this, but now with the additional information, I move that we go ahead and approve the expansion of the drug testing program for the remainder of the school year.
We have a motion, is there a second? Second. Motion by Dr. Langley, second by Mr. McCutcheon. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Nay.
Please raise your hands if you voted in favor. All opposed, please raise your hand.
I only say that because I want more data,
Okay.
not because I'm
Mo-
on the record. It's
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
If you would like me to provide that additional data, I most certainly can do that.
Okay. All right. Number 4, action item, budget and finance. Consideration of possible action to provide additional compensation for sheriff deputies who work traffic duty during the first week of school. Mr. Calden.
Since I made the
Thanks, sir.
recommendation, would you like for me to address it?
That's where I was going to, real fast. Yes, ma'am, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. There was an oversight at the beginning of school, and I think there was a misunderstanding on the part of someone in authority to authorize some sheriff deputies to work, thinking the amount was $50, not trying to override, but I think it was just a misstatement. And I appreciate Mr. Caldron because he is our CFO and rules are rules, and but at the same time, he understands how these things happen. I feel like it was the person who made this commitment did it inadvertently, thinking to expedite getting school open, and the sheriff deputies who worked on that assumption that there was authority to do that. So when it came to the business office, it was stopped because it was not within the parameters. So I'm asking the board for a one-time exception in this case to pay these gentlemen what we owe them and make a commitment that those kinds of things.
So
we're
we're clear moving forward though, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would make the motion for the additional pay for sheriff's deputies working traffic.
I second it.
I have a motion by Mr. Rogers, second by Ms. Kriegel. Is there any discussion? Just for the record, I think we're talking $320, right?
Yes, sir, thereabout.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, consideration of possible action to approve purchase of furniture for renovated curriculum department.
As you're aware of, we've been doing some renovations over at the old CTE area, and so the DAEP side has been opened, and we've got classroom and instruction going on over there at DAEP and School of Choice. So now we're on the curriculum side of the building, and we've gotten 3 quotes from approved vendors. What we ended up doing is we went out for rooms that would not require custom-built furniture and or cabinetry to make it fair, apples to apples amongst all respondents. We did get 3 responses. They were all in the same ballpark. When I say same ballpark, they were a couple $1,000s or a couple $100 off from each other. It was our recommendation to go with Verco. Verco was, in the respondents that we got, they were the lowest respondent. They do have a high quality of furniture. You'll see that throughout the Wildman building as it got converted into an elementary campus. And then total estimate at this point as we move forward with curriculum was about $250,000 for the furniture over at the curriculum renovation. So it's our request tonight that we proceed with Verco for the furniture over at the curriculum renovation.
What area will this money be coming from? Was it budgeted, bond funds?
This is going to continue coming out of the 2015 bond.
Okay.
As part of that $3+ million that was set aside, well, $5 million that was originally set aside for what is now Coleman's renovation. We did some minor repairs that brought that number to a little over $3 million, and this would be coming out of that money.
Sorry, you said $3 million for the renovations at the Coleman or at
Yes, ma'am.
the center?
So it was $5 million total for the renovations at Coleman. And then we did some HVAC, we did some painting, we did some lock set rekeying throughout the building. It brought it to a little bit short of $2 million for all of those expenditures. And so the remaining funds we've been using to renovate DAP, High School of Choice, and the curriculum area.
What is the current balance on that?
The current remaining amount is right at 3.1 million. And so we were looking at about 2.9 million, right at 3 million for the actual hammer renovation work. And so through investment earnings and the additional $100,000 that's still left on that original budget, we should be able to buy all the furniture that we need over at the curriculum area.
Does that fall in line with the dollar figures we had budgeted for the purchase of that?
So the original budget for furniture over at curriculum really didn't exist. It was an all-in of not to exceed the 3.1. With that, as a district, we did make some additional investments in Turner when we did the renovations over at Turner, and we made some additional investments over at Finley. And so, all in, all done, this would be in line with what we're spending furniture-wise over at other campuses, over at the new high school, and what we've spent over at Turner, and some of the modifications over at Finley.
Any other questions for Mr. Calden?
I have a question. When you refer to Coleman, are you talking about the campus or all of those facilities? I just want to make sure that the actual campus, did they get everything they needed at Coleman Junior High? I mean, are we good on furnishings there?
So specifically, when I'm talking the renovations at Coleman, the renovations were to the entire building itself, so
Okay,
HVAC
okay,
amongst
okay.
the entire building.
Okay.
At this point, the remaining funds would be spent on the renovations of the old CTE area that are becoming curriculum, DAP, and school of choice.
Okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion for action item 4.2, A2.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the purchase of the furniture for the renovated curriculum department.
Motion by Mr. McCutcheon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Langley. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. 4B, elections, consideration of possible action on request of Mr. Rogers relating to regulations of the board adopted on April 9th, 2018 regarding elections.
Do I get to talk?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, the board is very familiar with what my objectives are. But for the public, I wanted to elaborate a little bit. My first objective is to eliminate electioneering and rescind the electioneering policy that was implemented last April. With all due respect to the board members here and former board members, it was a complete debacle in my mind. It was very tough as a campaigner to participate in that policy and go by that policy, and it created a lot of problems for the school district. So that's my first objective, is to rescind that policy. So I don't know if that's gonna require a separate motion or how we
You can
want
have
to
as
do
many
that.
motions as you want. The way it's written, Mr. Aufferstein didn't rewrite it to a way that this could be a multi-motion item. As
I don't
long as
have a
it's
problem
under the
doing it.
electioneering. Yes, sir.
What is it specifically called, Mr. Aufferstein? The
Specifically,
electioneering?
it was just the board's regulations concerning electioneering on district-owned property. So the district-owned property used as polling locations.
So you're looking for, what the wording would be to rescind that?
Okay.
Is that the wording?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
to rescind the board's regulations concerning electioneering activities on district-owned polling locations.
Well, now I kind of feel like I'm in y'all's shoes. I'll entertain any questions y'all have for me.
So
Why
it was,
why I feel this way, or?
it was
any
my
concern?
understanding when we talked about this in workshop that it was to remove voting at schools.
That was my second objective.
That's what I was gonna ask you. If you just rescind the motion, that still doesn't take care of the other. Let's just have a motion, no elections.
That
in
was my
school
second
sites.
objective, yeah. I had two.
But the
And I didn't know if
motion-
you wanted to comprise it into one motion, or if you wanted to do it separately. Because they do go hand in hand, and one
I
may.
thought if we make the motion and we approve it, there's no elections on school properties, then that makes all this other mute.
They both take care of each other, except, I mean, one kind of takes care of the other. But I know there were some concerns about this building, so I wanted to address that.
So that, I was gonna elaborate on
thinking
that. I have no issues personally with removing voting from buildings where children are present.
Yeah.
At all. I do have some hesitation in removing it from this building for a couple of reasons. One is accessibility. I think this building makes it a lot easier for individuals to vote during early voting, other than just going to the elections office.
And I can respect that. Growing up here and being from this, town and lived here all my life, I appreciate this building and the history and being able, the forefathers to be able to come vote here. I just think we're in a different time now. This is a place of business. I think with the circus we had last election, it doesn't fit what we're trying to accomplish here as a place of business. I don't like the school property being littered with signs. I don't like people having the ability to, I guess, march in front of this building and create that atmosphere when we're trying to conduct business here. Similar to City Hall, you know, they don't hold elections at City Hall. And I feel we ought to follow that example. That's my position.
I've never lived inside the city, John, to vote. Did City Hall used to have you could vote at City Hall?
Yes.
When did that change? Do you know?
I don't know,
It was a
sir.
few years ago, but
Okay.
City Hall is 3 blocks from the voters registration, so.
Yeah, good point.
I will concede that Mr. Schoolfield had a concern that in the future, buildings may want to be used after hours or when kids are not present. And I will concede that we should consider those on a case-by-case basis moving forward. But as our foundation, I think we should eliminate all school property as polling locations. And I've spoken with Janet Onion, the elections official, and they're more than capable of handling the extra perceived volume of voters at the elections office.
How will we handle Election Day?
Election Day, in my mind, is on a Saturday, and kids are not present, and therefore, my stance on using Marvin Elementary, nothing would change for that.
So then we'd have to reword the motion where you can't just eliminate all school property.
That's kind of what I was going to get into on my multiple motions.
Can we just, can we vote on rescinding the regulations that were adopted in April? And is it necessary to have a vote on,
Good question.
on the other? I mean, can it just be a decision each time an election comes up as to whether, as to what locations are used for voting or
I
not?
think the answer to your question is yes. And whatever decision we make tonight can be changed by another
Sure.
board that's sitting in
Sure.
this
Sure.
very seat.
Generally speaking, it's each January that the board considers and negotiates with the county as to what polling locations it desires for the, generally speaking, trustee election. Then on occasion, when you have a proposed referendum, a bond, then it's the trustee and bond election. But generally speaking, it's each January that those decisions are made, and then the agreement brought to the board in February to agree to the terms with the county on where the polling locations are going to be for early voting and for then the election day. And the traditional trustee election the only polling location has been this building that's district-owned, has been this building, hasn't had campus locations for trustee election, and then Marvin on election day. So early voting here, election day, Marvin, that's the traditional. But truly, that decision doesn't have to be made until the time is ripe to negotiate with the county for what the election services are going to be for our election.
So there may not be a need to vote on something or set something in policy if it's a decision that's just made each year. And we don't, one
Yes,
board
'cause
votes on it and then one board changes it.
Ultimately, we're the ones that will make that decision in
Right.
January
Right.
on where.
I don't know if you're comfortable with that or not, Mr. Rogers.
Well, it was a situation that was, that I wanted to take care of. It just seems like we kick the can down the road, and it's something that we all, or some of us feel strongly about, and I thought I would go ahead and take care of it as soon as possible to eliminate any confusion on, because, you know, we wake up and now it's March or April, and now, you know, now we're rushed into a decision.
But we specifically have to name it in January when we call for the election.
So, I mean, January's just right around the corner.
So this would kind of be just a preemptive strike, but so we do the same thing in January. I mean, this couldn't stand for January, right?
Pardon?
If if the board votes today, could this be our January vote, or do we have to vote in January?
Ultimately, you're going to have an agreement with the county to hold your election. So you're going to have terms in that agreement. And
Okay.
truly, even if the board said no polling locations tonight, it would only bind the board insofar as the board wants to be bound, meaning that the board could then negotiate with the county. But tonight on this agenda, the specific resolution was board resolution regulating placement of political signs and electioneering activities at district-owned polling places. That was the title of it on April 9th. And you can have a motion to rescind that board resolution regulating placement of political signs and electioneering activities at district-owned polling places this evening, knowing that then going forward, you're not going to have those restrictions in place. You could urge additional restrictions at a later date if you wanted to try to determine different regulations to political signs and electioneering activities. But if you rescinded it, there would then be no restriction at this location or whatever location that an election would be held on the placement of political signs and electioneering activities.
I do see it as two separate issues. You know, one is the April policy that we would rescind, and then the other issue, in my opinion, I don't know, but my guess would be that we wouldn't need to vote. We could just decide in January what.
And we could bring Mrs. Onion here to talk about what the county can offer. I mean, and I don't mean to stand in the place of the board, but whatever the board wants to do, we will work to help the board do.
But would that be better for that to wait till January?
I believe you're looking for two things. One, to rescind the placement of political signs or the limitation of political signs. Number one.
Are we gonna feel any differently in January than we feel tonight? I mean, is it?
I'll go on record and tell you, I won't vote for removing all polling locations from WISD.
Okay.
Now, I am in favor of removing it where children are present, but I'm in favor of keeping it at this building right here. I'll go on the record saying that right now.
And I would probably be aligned with Dusty. One thing to consider too is voter turnout. You know, if we completely ban all district locations, we're going to have voter turnout's already really low.
The voters
that's
registration office
yeah.
is not as accessible as they want you to believe that it is.
Would anybody
But-
care to,
But the safety issue, I definitely agree with you on, for sure.
would anybody that works in this building care to weigh in on if it was a hindrance or not?
Shelley just nodded at me to say, yes, we can speak.
You're not going to offend us.
I will say, throughout this district's history, we have had polling go on in this boardroom with the finalization of the construction of the professional development wing over at Coleman Junior High. Truly, there won't be a need to have this room used for any other purpose but election, meaning the only, and I don't mean to say inconvenience, but when elections are taking place in this room, that's what goes on in this room. And so you don't use this room for any other purpose but election. Having the use of the professional development wing over at the Coleman campus, there's not going to be a need to schedule anything in here. And seeing the former employees, the parents, the stakeholders come and do their civic duty here, I think it's a good thing. But I don't mean to take place of policy. I just say, no, I don't believe it's a hindrance.
I asked you, so I want an honest opinion. Anybody else?
I will say that I think that our receptionist does a very good job of welcoming individuals into the building and ushering up, saying, you know, you're here for voting, great, thank you for coming. It's happening upstairs. Most of the individuals are here in the building less than 10 minutes. And then if they need other business with anyone, then they go back downstairs, see the receptionist and seek her help to get them to that person. So typically, other than the hustle and bustle of the building, there has not been any bother to me in doing my job or to anyone else that I've witnessed during that time frame.
I have a question. Is this building handicapped accessible? I know that there's a back door. Is there a bell or a ringer or anything to indicate that somebody is at the back door yet?
Isn't there a ramp in the back?
No.
There's a ramp to get to the back, and the door is open. It's a,
Oh, it's open during the day?
yes. It is set by support services, and so from 8 to 4:30, the operational hours of the building, it's an open door.
Right.
I mean, it has a little green light on that badge access, then when we're closed, it goes back to red, but again, that's closed.
So, okay.
So yes, the handicapped
So right
person.
now, if we had a handicapped person that wanted to come to our meeting, would they be able to access it without contacting somebody inside? I'm just asking.
I believe on the nights of the public meeting too, and it's set by support services, it's green now. So,
Okay,
I don't
that's
know
what I need
from
to
what
know.
hours it ends, but yes, if you were
Okay.
coming to our meeting, you'd go up the
Okay.
ramp, come in the back door, and then we had the elevator.
Okay, I'm just asking because a few years ago, it was not handicapped. Now,
Okay.
that green light was not there.
Well,
Okay.
And and if there's ever a time we notice that it's not operable, we can work to
No,
make
this
sure it
was
is.
before it was put in. I wasn't
Okay.
aware that it had been put in.
Okay.
Rick, I'm pretty clear on what I want to do, if y'all are ready.
I'll entertain a motion at any time.
Yep. My first motion would be to rescind the electioneering policy that was implemented last April.
And I will second that.
Can you state that policy for the record?
That, I already asked for a name and I didn't get one.
I gave it, so let me,
It's in
the
the
motion of
board
Mr.
book.
Rogers for the purpose of the minutes is to rescind the board resolution regulating placement of political signs and electioneering activities at district-owned polling places on April 9th, 2018.
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
A motion by
Good with
Mr.
that.
Rogers, second by Ms. Kriegel. Is there any other discussion? So I have a question. It may be a legal question. If we still allow voting here, then how will that affect placement of polling, or political signs?
When this is rescinded, then ultimately the only restriction is no signs and no electioneering outside of 100 feet. So
Okay.
the county will
Okay.
make a circle essentially around.
Okay.
And then any signs and any electioneering activity outside 100 feet would be authorized.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now second one.
Yes, sir. My second motion would be to eliminate any WISD property as polling location where children are present. Does that make sense to everybody? I will concede this building, after talking, after the discussion. I don't have a problem with this building being used.
I would like to say on that, I spent a couple hours on the phone this morning and yesterday after church, calling around and talking to some people in the public kind of on my list of getting their feelings on that, so I wasn't making my own choice. And the majority of them that I spoke to, and I realize that's a sample, were in favor of leaving voting in this building. And that's not scientific or whatever, but it does lead me to where, you know, I felt pretty strong about it last week, and I said, wait a minute, Clay, you need to go look and ask somebody else and not make your own decision. But that was the feedback I received.
My only concern was just this being a place of
So
business.
We have a motion. I need a
Okay.
second.
Okay, the motion clarifies, or the way it was worded, it would not affect this building,
Exactly,
and it would not affect Marvin on election day.
right.
All right, I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now we can
I
have a
second.
discussion.
My only concern was this building was
Interruption of,
the interruption of business and, you know, the sideshows we historically had, in our community, so.
Lee, for policy technicalities, is that a specific enough motion, or do we need to specifically say?
Ultimately, I believe the motion was to eliminate early voting locations on WISD property where children are present,
Correct.
thus leaving open the administration building for early voting and any location for election day.
Correct.
Right.
That's clear enough?
I think so.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all
And
in favor?
And ultimately, we'll use this as our guidance when we're going forward, because the main action item will then be in January when we bring back the agreement with the elections office, and presuming I'm following the advice of the board, what we'll be bringing you is an agreement to have early voting in this building where there's no children present, and election day voting at Marvin Elementary, with the county using its elections office concurrent.
Okay, all in,
One-
go ahead.
And so, really, any camp, as long as children aren't present, if there was the need to use another campus,
Yeah, and.
We can
and-
do that.
And Clay brought that up, and I can see, leaving that open. My main concern is the
Right.
kids.
Right.
You know, voting where kids are present. And-
I believe Garland ISD just canceled school one day because they used their campuses for general election, so that leaves the door open if we ever need to do that.
well, and I would like to add one thing just for, this is just another observation. There are groups that are actively against, not even for safety reasons, but, against, say, having early voting during an open house because of the perception of the district promoting advocacy for, say, a bond election. So this would help us in that regard, if that makes any sense.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, at this time, we will convene in the closed session according to Texas Education Code, Section 551.001 et sec. It is 7:46. First thing on our agenda, oh, I'm sorry, I thought Kim was back. That's all right, we're gonna go ahead anyway. HR, item number 6A, Human Resources. Consideration to approve the personnel report as recommended by Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Autry. Within the personnel report this evening, we are not urging the hire of any new employees at this time, but we do have 2 positions we're urging the board to create, along with stipends for 2 level 2 or 2 directors presently compensated on level 7 of the administrative scale to be able to supervise other directors on that same pay scale. And so those directors would essentially be referred to as level 2 directors with that supervisory authority of other directors on the same scale. So first item, we urge the board to create 2 positions to begin in January of this year. We would post the positions immediately, begin the hiring process for these positions with an expectation to hire in January. And these 2 positions would be the deans of international business and health science academies at Global High School. And so these deans would be teachers first. They would teach classes, but they would also lead their respective programs, the International Business Academy and the Health Science Academy at Global High School, as we grow the Global High School, Early College High School to be more than just a STEM Early College High School Academy, but a multi-academy Early College High School.
Thank you. Okay, so it's gonna require 2 motions. I will read the motion, and then you guys can move accordingly. The first motion is, I need a motion to approve the creation of Global High School Dean of Health Sciences Academy and Dean of International Business Academy to be compensated on level 4 of the administrative pay scale.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Starnader, second by Mr. Rogers. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now the second part of the HR. I need a motion to approve the creation of extra duty stipends in the amount of $2,400 per year for level 2 directors compensated on level 7 of the administrative pay scale to supervise directors on the same scale. Motion by Mr. McCutcheon, second by Mr. Schofield. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
President. And the second item under my report is a action regarding board policy, and it's to amend CKE local, which would essentially just reference the fact locally that we have an SRO program and a school marshal program. And we already have those programs already in existence. We already had those programs authorized under CKE legal and specific policies approved by the board, but this would just merely reference that in our formal local policies that are published, plus an amendment within the packet of board policies that helped us create the Guardian Plan. We had a reference within GKA local that ultimately did not specifically authorize, but could lead a member of the public to believe that there could be an exception allowing a general member of the public, not an employee, not an officer of the district, but a general member of the employee, a general member of the public to carry a handgun. The board has never taken any such action. And so just to clarify the board policy, we urge that the board revert GKA local to its present, to its former form, but then also approve an amendment within DH local that merely includes a reference to the authority in CKC local for potentially qualified candidates to be authorized by the board that meet specific requirements to essentially carry a firearm as authorized by the board. So we urge the revision of CKE local regarding marshals and SRO program, the insertion of language in DH local that would reference the existence of a Guardian Plan as applicable to certain employees, and the reversion of GKA local to its prior state, so that there's no confusion that there are no non-employees and non-officers of the district that would be so authorized under the Guardian Plan.
Any questions for Mr. Avishon? Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to revise WISD board policy CKE local and DH local and revert GKA local to clarify district policies regarding safety and security as presented by Mr. Avishon.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rogers, second by Mr. Schofield. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Did I make that simple enough?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, all right. Okay, next item on our agenda, Superintendent's Report, District Improvement Plan 2017-2018.
Yes, sir. Unless there are questions, you're asking for, go ahead, but you can set yourself up for questions, go ahead. I was just gonna ask if they had any questions, because I put the information from Mr. Blaylock, we're about to approve the next improvement plan. And so typically districts talk about the old plan, or at least potential results. Actually, Mr. Blaylock presented some of this summary at DAT for the parents and community. Excellent job. So, now, kind of bring up that one sheet over, but this plan, this will look very similar to the plan we asked to present, but this would let you know how, we had the plan last year, this is how well we did, and so we will be bringing a new plan. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask Ms. Blaylock, or if you say, you have questions? Ms. Blaylock.
I actually read the whole.
All right.
Yes. Okay, about the I Love You Guys. Did all of the teachers receive training in the I Love You Guys? Or what is our process on that?
In June and August, we provided 2 train the trainers
Right.
sessions, and then they are going throughout this year and training on their own campuses. Officer Eric Kyle, Director of Security or Security Coordinator, has been going to each campus and walking them through those expectations. So to answer your question, they did not all receive the formal training from the I Love You Guys Foundation. They are receiving it through their campus-based program. Who were trained were campus administrators, counselors, nurses, front office staff, and then the campus principals were given the opportunity to send up to 6 to 7 additional staff members that were leaders on their campus that they would want to have on their emergency response team.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered if everyone was trained yet or not. Thank you.
Do you want to add to? Oh, Officer Kyle, do you want to add to that?
Yes.
We have people listening on the web, so they might want to hear you.
Each year in August, I do go around and we did, when we did our EOP presentation for what we do during the events and the drills, I went to every single campus and went over that program with all the staff that would be on that campus. So everybody gets it each year in the beginning of August. And then new staff and new subs that come in, we do it once a month, and those folks get that same program, so that way they don't have to wait till August. And then, so it's a year-round thing that keeps on going, and then August, we'll go back and I'll hit all the campuses again and do the same program.
I just wondered if everyone had been trained yet, but that sounds like a great plan.
Okay.
And Officer Kyle updated his annual EOP training, that emergency operation plan. He updated it this year with the training from the I Love You Guys Foundation, the standard response protocol, and the standard reunification method.
Any other questions? Okay. Number 2, consideration with possible action regarding consulting services related to superintendent search. You want me to go? Sure. Okay. So this was placed on the agenda. There have been a couple of concerns from trustees that we might not have gotten as many responses to our RFQ that we submitted for search firms for our superintendent. I consulted board president at a very large school district, 50,000 plus students, bounced some questions off of her, talked to a couple of other trustees throughout the state, and they have a whole lot more experience in this than I do, and expressed those concerns that had been about potential lack of responses and possibly going back out for RFQ. And every single one of them told me that we would be making a very, very bad mistake if we did that. that I told them how many that we had, and that was pretty common to have 5 or 6 responses. So, I think one district said they had 6. And it would send a bad message to I believe we got 5 or 6, the 5 or 6 that took the time to respond to our RFQ, and that they weren't good enough, or we weren't possibly sure what we were looking for, or that we already had our mind made up that we were going to go with someone else and that they would not be resubmitting. So it could potentially, we could turn out with less responses if we went out with a second RFQ. So that was why this was put on here, to address that issue. It would be my recommendation is that we interview every single one of them that applied.
That's a good recommendation.
We do that in the next couple of weeks at one of our called meetings. We can allow them a specific amount of time and do them all in one night and make our
Coincidentally, I
decision that
brought your
night.
schedule, because we ought to decide tonight.
I want to hear what the rest of the board has to say about that. Anyone agree, disagree?
I'm open to interviews. A lot of the information from each of them is somewhat similar. There's some it's different, though. I think it's always better to sit down face to face with somebody if you're gonna hire them, especially to do something of this magnitude, and have that face to face conversation with them. So I'm fine with that, and I know we'd like to get somebody as quickly as possible, but I don't want to make a mistake either. So I'd rather, if it took another 2 or 3 weeks, I'd rather do that too.
It's typical to give 30-minute interviews, that we would allow 30 minutes and then 15 minutes to switch out. So it would be,
I guess the first question is, are you guys okay with sticking with the ones that we have? That would be the first question.
Absolutely. They were the ones that stepped up.
That's the way I look at it. They took the time.
There are no second chances. I mean, if they would have wanted to be considered, they'd have had their RFP in.
no, we did get one late, but I think we're recommending that we not bring that to the board, because it wasn't like it was 5 minutes late.
We did receive one late,
Just one?
and with the way we put it out under an RFP, that's not acceptable.
So we have 5.
I was surprised that there were a couple of groups that I'm aware of that did not send one in. That was surprising to me.
I was surprised when I spoke to a board president of a 50,000 plus student district, and she told me it's very common for our district, 5 to 6. Now, I was very, very shocked at that. She said that's really common.
I will say, because I think I know who you're thinking of, because they actually called me and said, is it posted? You know, what happened? And I said, well, here's the dates in this. And that person who's over a bigger organization said, you know, we have a lady who's supposed to look for that, they don't know how she missed it. Because I said, well, you know, if you'll click here, it's here. So I think in some cases it was just I mean, I'm not saying that's okay, we should do anything about it, but I think for one, I know it was just a fluke.
Well, my concern is that there's not a whole lot, and I'm missing one of the books, but I didn't see a lot of that one. A lot of Texas experience. I saw a lot of out-of-state experience, and I saw among most of them. And then the one that was out of Mansfield, they really didn't have a lot of experience with the superintendents that they had chosen. So I do have some concerns about, this is the most important decision that we will make as a board.
You could also interview these 5 and then decide you want to repost. I mean, I
agree with that.
I'd like to get your, you know, for you to get input on that, but this doesn't mean you're married. This means this is our first step. And since most of y'all haven't done this before, that would be I think that would be time well spent, but you're still not committed.
Yeah, just because we said to interview these 5 doesn't mean we're committed to any of them.
Right. In fact, we could have that night that there is no action, so no one would expect you to make, and then that would give y'all time to think.
Is there a particular day you guys would like to do these interviews?
Can I just go over their calendar, Mr. President?
Yes, I sure would like to do them during the day instead of at night.
Or start maybe in the afternoon, you know?
Yes.
I'm pretty content with what we have, so I'm in no hurry.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
I will agree with that, but I can tell you right now, We've had that discussion and,
It didn't go very far.
no. No.
I'm still holding out hope. She'll fall in love with us.
I'm already in love with you. So let's pick a date. Okay, let's think. If you do 30 minutes each and 15 minutes between, 45 times 5 is?
4 hours.
4 hour, 4.5.
So if we start at, is 4 o'clock a reasonable time for you? Wait, what, I didn't see, what are you holding up? Okay, 2 o'clock.
1 or 2.
32.
Okay. You have a meeting, of course, the meeting tonight. Next Monday is a holiday. Tuesday is a board workshop that starts at 3. And then the next, not that Thursday, but the next Thursday is 10 to 1.
Okay, so Thursday the 18th?
No, sir, Thursday the 25th.
No, I'm saying Thursday the 18th
Oh,
is open.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will not be in town.
Okay, well, it is critical that we pick a day. I don't
That's
care how
also
long
the
it
day of the kickoff for the academies for
Oh.
Global.
takes. Good catch. See, I didn't have that on y'all's calendar. Okay, so, that's a good try.
Monday the 22nd.
I will be back I won't be back in town till the 24th.
When are you leaving?
Afternoon of the 18th and be back the 20th.
Where are you going?
I'll never tell till I get back. No, I'll be back on the 22nd, or 23rd. I'll be available to work on the 24th.
Okay, how about the 24th?
24th's good.
24th
Ms.
is
Kriegel?
good for me.
I really think so. I'll have to, if I'll just read.
Now, we're talking about 2 to 6. I have responsibilities at 7.
We'll start at 1.
1 o'clock?
Starting at 1 would be even better.
Then you
On
want,
the 5.
Ms. Starnader?
October 24th.
That's a Wednesday.
You want to change the time to 1 o'clock instead of 2 o'clock?
Yeah, that would
So
help
we can
me.
get Joe done.
I would.
Okay,
Wednesday, October 24th, 1 p.m.
sounds good to me. Who's going to be responsible for notifying?
We'll take care of that.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll get I'll work with Ryan on how we do that. So 1 to whenever, with no motion, it would be, we're gonna interview and
Yes.
then, oh, look, then the next day, we could,
Interviews with no possible with no action.
yeah.
Okay, do we want to eliminate that totally?
Well, that's true. You could
I
all,
mean,
it's
could we-
easier if you put it on there and not do it than if you can't, if you decide you wanna do something
What
and.
I'm saying is we interview the 5 and all 7 of us just go. That's one right there. And why have another meeting?
We have one a meeting
Because you have one the
day.
next day anyway,
Okay.
and I will make certain it's on that agenda.
Okay.
So 1 to, what'd you say, 1 to what? Sir, what time do you say you have to be at?
1 to 5.
1 to 5.
1 to 5 is fine with me.
And what we will do, we will set it up and so that they're not here, we'll have a separate room so because they all know each other, but we won't avoid any awkwardness. Technically, anybody could be here, it would be an open meeting, they could sit in on each other's interview, but usually there's a professional understanding that they don't do that. Like with architects, you can interview them, but they respect each other, so we'll set it up to make it easy for that. And we will have lunch, sir, at 12:30. Have lunch, Ms. Villarreal, let's have lunch ready at 12:30. And we'll send a reminder that y'all have 12:30.
All right. Is there any other business, any other discussion? This time I entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. McCutcheon,
Second.
second by Mr. Schofield. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 7-0.
Dusty, just to look, if we do the superintendent search here and y'all say we're gonna we're gonna pick one, then what we need to do that day is say what.